Incoming message.
Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into something absolutely massive today. If you've been following the news at all lately, you definitely know about the explosive May 2026 Pentagon release regarding these mysterious anomalies photographed during the Apollo missions. For decades, we all basically thought we had the complete picture of humanity's journeys to the moon, right? Well, as this newly declassified cache of documents and photographs proves, the story we were told was actually missing some truly staggering chapters. We're going to dive strictly into the data, the source photographs, and the official statements to understand exactly what was kept hidden from us.
And I want to hook you right out of the gate with this number, 57, because that represents 57 years. For exactly 57 years, these photographic encounters and these incredible testimonies from the pilots were locked away in classified government storage. I mean, really think about that time frame. That is over half a century of total institutional silence. We aren't talking about lost files or some administrative mix-up. These were deliberately classified records kept completely out of the public eye for generations.
So, that brings us directly to the absolute core of what we're investigating today. What on Earth, or rather what on the moon, did 3 separate Apollo crews actually see up there that forced the government to lock these files away so tightly? That is the mystery we are tackling. We're going to step through this chronologically, mapping out the timeline to see exactly how this giant puzzle piece pieces together. And I promise you, by the end of this explainer, you are going to look up at the night sky completely differently.
Okay, let's lay out the timeline here, because this definitely isn't just an isolated incident. We are looking at a compounding pattern that unfolded over 5 decades. It kicks off with the lunar orbiter back in 1966, moves right through the Apollo 12 landing in 1969, escalates in a huge way with Apollo 17 in 1972, and finally culminates in the historic 2026 Pentagon release. Tracing this chronologically is absolutely crucial because it proves we aren't just dealing with, one confused astronaut or a glitchy camera. We're dealing with a sustained, documented historical sequence.
But to really get the full context, we kind of need to look even further back. NASA actually has an official formal term for this, transient lunar phenomena, or TLPs. These are defined as unexplained lights and events on the lunar surface. And bringing this up brilliantly illustrates that these mysterious lunar observations actually predate the Apollo missions by centuries. The astronauts definitely weren't the first to see strange things happening on the moon. They were just the closest observers we'd ever had.
To put that into perspective, just take a look at this number. There are over 2,200 documented transient lunar phenomena reports. And these aren't coming from random folks staring up from their backyards. We are talking about reports from professional, highly credentialed observatories using the absolute best equipment of their time, stretching all the way back to the 1600s. That is 400 years of credentialed astronomers looking at the moon and basically saying, wait, what the heck was that?
Well, that historical curiosity suddenly turned into hard data in 1966. NASA's lunar orbiter was up there mapping the moon, and it photographed what appeared to be regularly spaced structural formations right on the lunar surface. Now, what's really fascinating about this 1966 discovery is how the government actually handled it. There were no grand press conferences, no public announcements. The images were quietly studied behind closed doors and then just filed away. It essentially set the exact precedent for how the upcoming Apollo findings would be treated.
Which brings us to Chapter 1, the Apollo cover-ups, spanning 1969 to 1972. Now, a lot of people in the research community already knew that Apollo 11's strange encounters were hidden. Buzz Aldrin's report of a sizable object and a bright light source pacing their craft, yeah, that had been classified for 57 years. But let's look at how this builds with Apollo 12 in November 1969. The recent Pentagon release actually included archival photographs from the landing site that had been sitting in classified storage. And in one of those images, an anomalous object is clearly, undeniably visible in the frame. And just to be absolutely clear here, NASA's original analysts flagged this themselves. They confirmed it was not a lens flare and it wasn't some darkroom processing artifact. It was a discrete object hovering right above the lunar terrain that they simply could not identify.
It's honestly wild when you look at the dramatic contrast in NASA's threshold for classification. The official public releases are exactly what you'd expect. Hundreds of photos showing totally unremarkable rocks, the astronauts, the lunar rovers, the standard equipment, but the classified archives? That's where they kept the unidentified objects. They published literally everything that was unremarkable, but deliberately hid the things that weren't. The standard that kept that Apollo 12 image locked in a vault was apparently just the presence of an unidentified object above the surface. Not sensitive safety data, not classified technical specs, just the object itself.
And then we get to December 1972, the final Apollo moon landing. Apollo 17 is where the released material becomes truly mind-blowing. Commander Gene Cernan,
Harrison Schmitt and Ronald Evans reported a whole series of escalating, completely unexplained phenomena. They reported 3 mysterious dots flying in formation, actually changing geometry relative to the lunar horizon. They described these incredibly bright, tumbling, rotating luminous particles moving entirely independently near their spacecraft. And honestly, most spectacularly, they reported what they called 4th of July flashes, these multiple, simultaneous sparks of light down on the lunar surface below them, with absolutely zero meteorological or electrical explanation.
But the visual proof from Apollo 17 is the real game-changer here. Dan Farah, the director of the documentary Age of Disclosure, totally hit the nail on the head when describing the impact of this newly declassified photograph. He called it the most significant new UAP release we have ever seen. This photograph explicitly captures 3 distinct dots grouped together above the lunar terrain, which basically firmly cements the astronauts' verbal reports right into indisputable, hard photographic evidence.
Moving into Section 2, the era of silence and 5 decades of classified corroboration.
Because here's the thing, this isn't just a random collection of weird space stories. When you actually step back and look at the sequence of events, a really powerful scientific principle starts to emerge. Let's walk through what we call the Rule of 3. Step 1. Apollo 11 spots a sizable object. Step 2. Apollo 12 photographs an anomalous object. Step 3. Apollo 17 experiences multiple anomalies and photographs them. That is 3 missions, 3 entirely independent crews, 0 personnel overlap, and they are all reporting the exact same category of phenomenon. In science, when 3 independent observers use different equipment in different locations at different times and report the exact same thing, that level of corroboration is literally the gold standard of evidence. The moon wasn't just randomly generating these observations.
And we absolutely must remind ourselves exactly who is providing this evidence. These witnesses are not amateurs. They aren't just casual skywatchers. These astronauts are the most rigorously selected, comprehensively trained, and closely monitored human beings ever sent into space. Their psychological stability, their perceptual accuracy, their capacity for rational observation under extreme pressure, all of it was tested beyond any standard ever applied to human beings. If these highly trained observers said they saw something, you better believe they saw something. All right, Chapter 3, the 2026 Pentagon Bombshell, and a truly historic admission.
This right here is the absolute climax of our timeline and the ultimate resolution to this 57-year mystery. I want you to read this explosive quote with me. Speaking directly about that 1972 Apollo 17 photograph, the 2026 Pentagon statement officially reads, "We are not aware of any human explanation for the anomaly." I mean, just let the gravity of that sink in for a second. After decades of rumors, whispers, and leaks, the official declassification of that Apollo 17 image finally forced the government's hand. You have the United States government officially, formally admitting on the public record that they cannot explain what is in a photograph taken by their own astronauts on the moon. They didn't say they won't explain it. They said they cannot explain it with any known human mechanism.
And that single statement completely shatters the profound tension we've been living with for the last 5 decades. Look at this contrast. On one side, we had 57 years of institutional silence and rigid official denials. But on the other side, we had the unimpeachable, totally undeniable testimony of the Apollo pilots, backed up by classified data locked in the archives. For half a century, the public was repeatedly told there was absolutely nothing to see up there. But that undeniable pilot testimony has finally been vindicated by the exact same institution that tried to hide it.
So let's connect all the dots here and look at the complete picture. We have 400 years of documented transient lunar phenomena. We have the 1966 orbiter capturing structural photographs. We have 3 separate, highly classified Apollo missions fully corroborating unidentified objects. And now we have the historic 2026 Pentagon admission. Whatever is on the moon, or near it, has clearly been there for a very long time. And actually, here's a crazy, surprising fact to add to the mix. Lawmakers who have recently been briefed on the next upcoming batch of unreleased UAP files are outright describing them as actual proof of non-human intelligence.
Which leaves us with this final, burning thought. What did the Apollo astronauts really see up there? The government has officially run out of plausible deniability, and it's crystal clear the moon is not exactly what they told us it was. I really want to hear your theories on this, so please drop a comment below with what you think they actually encountered. And hey, make sure to subscribe to The Explainer because that second batch of files is dropping any day now, and we're going to be right here to break down the slides and show you exactly what's inside. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.
Come to me, chickens. Cock-a-doodle-doo.